If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP, the AI native ERP that upgrades right from QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. This is the follow-up from the middle, bringing more of your voices into the conversation each week. And today we are following up on the economy and the state of your economy. We asked you what extra expense was worth it and what you were cutting out of your budget amid higher prices. And to talk more about that and hear more of your voices, I am joined by my old friend, Jill Schlesinger, CBS News business analyst, host of Jill on Money and her podcast, Money Moves. Jill, great to see you.
So nice to be with you. I feel like the audience doesn't know that we have such a long history. But anyway, Jeremy and I are old friends, and I know all of his secrets, so write to me separately. I'll let you in on them.
Exactly. And also, people don't know that you are maybe the hardest guest we've ever booked on this show. We have tried so many times, but you're too busy. But we're glad that we have you here for a few minutes.
So happy to be with you. Hopefully the next time will be much easier.
Yes. So this is the question that I started off with on the show with Diane Swank, the economist. I asked her how she would rate the economy right now. I'll ask you the exact same question, just based on what you're seeing in your reporting, and your podcasting, and the people you're talking to. How do things look right now?
You know, it's so fun. First of all, I love Diane, and she's so great. And what she does really well is kind of drills down into like the economic numbers and able to translate that. I think I do the same thing. I do it from sort of the ground up, because on both of my shows, I'm talking to people about what's going on in their own lives. And of course, every time I'm on television, it's such a wide cast of people viewing that you hear a lot from all different sorts of people. So I think how you're doing and how the economy is doing really depends on who you are. And this has always been the case with the economy. It's just that generally speaking, when things are going well in the past, it's been like, hey, the economy's growing. People have jobs, they're spending money. Most of the time, everyone is participating in some way. I think in this iteration of where we are, it feels a little bit different. It feels like, hey, it's great if you have a house, if you have investments, your asset level has gone up pretty dramatically. Yeah, you can complain about high prices, but you can afford those prices. And if you look at maybe people who are really living paycheck to paycheck and they are struggling, that's where you start to hear fissures in this story. So they may have jobs, they may even be spending money, but they're not feeling really good. And so I think that that's very different than the kind of economies where we would have expansion or growth, and you would think people are feeling better and doing better. And it has not been that way uniformly across Americans.
Yeah, we heard from somebody who said that they were cutting down on buying IPAs and instead were buying light beers, that they weren't seeing any of the yellow tags at Walmart showing sales, and that was something that they were noticing that was making their average bill go up. Then we got this comment from a listener, Sandra in Denver, Colorado, said, we canceled the trip to the recent British Open as the 10 days, even with frequent flyer miles and hotel credits, would have cost us more than $1,000 a day. The fuel surcharge and taxes cost as much as what we are used to paying out of pocket for economy tickets to Europe.
I mean, look, this is somebody who is like booking a trip to Europe, so they're pretty fortunate, right? I think that people make choices every day. I hear things a little bit differently. I mean, I think I hear two different sides of this. You know, on the Jill on Money show, it tends to be people who have money, right? You don't listen to a show called Jill on Money if you're not interested in money.
Right.
And they're talking about retirement. But a lot of people are talking about, hey, you know what? The future is uncertain. Maybe I'll keep working. I thought I was going to retire at this age. Maybe I'll work an extra couple of years. Not sure about the prices out there. And then on my new show on Money Moves, we're really talking to people who are under the age of 45, and they are making critical choices every day. And a lot of these people are college educated. Some have debt, some don't. But there are people who are really major league prioritizing and saying to themselves, like I heard from a young woman who's 33 years old. She's like, I am taking every dollar right now that I'm earning and I'm saving it so I can freeze my eggs. That's my priority. There's no extras anymore. And I think that those are the choices that people are making. And I think what's fascinating about this time, Jeremy, is that, when you make these choices, it usually is reflected in economic data. It really is. Like if people are really choosing to spend less, we would see retail sales start to really shrink a little bit. And we haven't seen that. So we're making different choices, but we are still spending. I think that has to do with the fact that the labor market is still pretty decent if you have a job.
It's interesting. I was talking to a friend who owns a number of restaurants and said that the steakhouses were performing particularly badly because people are going out on business accounts. They're ordering the same amount, but they're not going as often as they were. And that he sees that as a barometer of kind of the economy right now. Now, we did hear, Jill, from people who were making very serious decisions about what to cut out. And listen to this caller talking about skipping out on medical tests because of the expense.
We had to cancel a medical test for my wife because it was going to be $1,000 out of pocket. And so now we're having to make the choice between one test versus another. So it's extremely frustrating. Our class hasn't changed a whole lot, but it's that there are so many other expenses that are eating up more of our budget now with inflation that we have to make those choices more often. So probably if it was a year ago, we would have more cushion to be able to say, let's just do both tests. But that's not the case right.
It really puts it in perspective for you, the choices people are having to make right now.
Yeah, and I think these healthcare costs are pretty staggering, and I think that people experienced a real change when the Affordable Care Act changed and some of the benefits changed and some of the tax credits changed and some people lost coverage. I heard from somebody who was saying to me, basically, she's like, I had to work less. I had to work fewer hours. And it's like perverse because this is exactly what many economists really don't want to happen. They want people to work as much as they possibly can and get the insurance they can qualify for. But in her case, working an extra 4 hours a week was the difference of paying $950 a month out of pocket for her health insurance. So obviously she's like, I'm cutting my hours so I can actually qualify for tax credits.
Right.
So these are huge, huge issues. I mean, look, there's not a simple solution for this either. I mean, I think that that's the problem is that these are complex issues that require policy changes. We can barely get two sides of the aisle to agree that there's an aisle in between them.
Right. And also, by the way, the policy changes that have occurred recently, as you mentioned, like earlier this year, a lot of people got knocked off their Obamacare. So it's not like the policy changes are making it easier for people to afford healthcare right now. A reminder to follow us on Substack if you are not already. We're at listentothemiddle.substack.com. We'll be back with CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger in a moment.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino Ciao. A gift from Italy to your home. San Pellegrino Ciao is a flavored sparkling water made with real fruit juice, finished with a pinch of Sicilian salt for a perfectly balanced taste. So which flavor will you choose? Peach, lime, blood orange, cherry, or maybe the all-new limoncello? Crafted in Italy with 0 grams of added sugar. San Pellegrino Ciao. Buy it now.
Welcome back to the follow-up. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I'm joined by CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger, host of Jill on Money and her new podcast, Money Moves. Jill, the biggest thing that many people spend money on is a house. That would be the biggest single expense. And the interest rates in this country are still very high if you're taking out a mortgage. Frankly, home prices haven't come down all that much either. What do you see happening with the housing market?
We are in a stalled housing market, to be blunt, and it's not a fun time. If you have to look for a house, then, and you can afford it, fine. But, since the pandemic, yes, the rate of price increases has slowed down. That's good. But prices are still about 40% higher than they were in 2021, okay? And to put this in a very stark way, if you looked at a house, let's just look at the last 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And you said, I have the exact same house in 2021. I want to buy that exact same house in 2026, and it costs 80% more to actually carry that exact same house. So we have an entire generation of people that, or let's say for the time being, are really shut out of the housing market. It's hard to come up with a down payment of 10, 15, 20%. It is very difficult to be financing with a 30-year fixed rate loan at 6.5% or 7%. Homeowners insurance has gone through the roof because of climate change. Taxes are up. So in many cases, I still think that although this seems to be something that a lot of my cohort, I'm much older than you are, Jeremy, they kind of look their noses down on this. But you know what? I think it's okay to rent. And I think if you run the numbers and you're like, you know what? I can be a happy renter. And by renting, I have flexibility, I have opportunity. I can put money into my retirement account through work. I have a much easier time of it. If you can give yourself permission to be a happy renter, I think that you can still accumulate wealth. And this weird notion of like you must buy a home to be financially secure is actually not true. But I wish that more people would just let those voices tamp down in the back and, get off that road of I must buy a home. You may be able to buy a home in 5 years or in 10 years, but currently in many, many markets, it is so much more affordable to rent than to own.
Said like a true New Yorker. Love to rent. All right. This is another email that came in from a listener. Dana in Lawrence, Kansas writes, I'm cutting back on driving, eating out, and food delivery, buying brand name goods, and acquiring any additional savings. I am usually treading water. The luxuries I can still afford myself are microwavable meals, a book, a donation of a small size to a favorite nonprofit, and an occasional ice cream. I love that she includes a donation to a small nonprofit. But what do you think about that when she says savings gets cut out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is what often occurs is that when you're tight, you don't save as much. What I'm hopeful is that in this case, that, if she's working her butt off in Kansas and she has a retirement plan available to her, that at the very least, she's putting in some amount of money to capture a company match or an organizational match. If she doesn't have that, even to just have enough, just like even if you said to cut back instead of not saving as much, not saving at all, a little bit. And if you can do that, it will serve you so much better than just cutting it out. Listen, at the end of the day, you have to pay your bills. And I'd rather eat ice cream and maybe cut back on my donation and keep the money going into my retirement account. But that's me. I like ice cream.
I like ice cream too. Favorite flavor?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one. I'm going to say coffee in general, but
okay,
I'm a soft serve twist kind of person.
Okay. I'm a mint chocolate chip person myself.
Yes,
That's
you are.
My favorite.
You are minty.
All right, let's get to another voicemail. Listen to this caller.
Hi, this is Andrea in Kansas City, and the thing that my husband and I are giving up is savings, retirement savings. We had a daughter last year, and until next month, I am the equal breadwinner with my husband. We make almost the exact same amount of money, but we have elected to let me change jobs and work a part-time teaching job, which will mean moving benefits onto my husband's plate, cutting back quite a bit because it comes with a steep pay cut, and we will also not be saving nearly as much as we had the luxury to up till this point.
Yeah, this one is interesting, though. I think this is temporary. I really do, because it sounds to me like we're making a change. We have this child. This is an infant, right? It also sounds like there's a possibility that in some group of years, kids going to school, maybe she can go off and go full time again and then be able to save more. So I think look, there are many times where if you're in a temporary situation, you cut back, right? You do what you have to do, but it's not a forever decision. There are times where people say, I'm cutting back on my retirement savings because I want to buy a house and I want to put some money over here, but then they resume it. So if she resumes it, then I think we're in good shape.
So that gets to the issue of savings. What about credit card debt? What about people who say, you know what, in this moment in time, because of how much my bills are right now and how little I can afford it, I'm just going to add to credit card debt?
I mean, look, some people don't have a choice, and I get that. But the average credit card interest rate, average, is like 22, 23%.
Right.
And if that's average, that means a lot of people paying 28, 29%. You get into credit card debt now, it's going to take an awfully long time to get out of it. So last resort, I guess. But try to exhaust everything else prior to doing that. See if you can actually borrow money from friends, family, because that's just a really hard hole to dig out of.
Do you find that even in this day and age, that many people know that people know the basics. They have the basic financial understanding to make sure that they don't get into trouble in that way.
Yes, I absolutely do. I think we have a much better educated consumer around finances. As much as, people will say, like, I'm not good with money, but they understand credit card debt very bad. And they also understand, like, the basics, that all the things that they know have been told to them from their elders really do mean something. Think about a lot of, especially the young people, when you think about what they grew up in, they saw a crisis in 2008, 2009 wipe out a lot of friends and family. They know the perils of debt.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I just want to come back to the sort of the big picture here. The crisis of 2008 and 2009, the financial crisis, the Great Recession that we had, a very slow recovery that went on for many years. We obviously just went through the COVID pandemic and the inflation that followed that got much higher than what we're seeing right now. But right now we have this like moderately annoying inflation and also a lot of inequality too. What is this? How are we going to get to a point where it's a better economy for more people in this country?
Well, I also want to add one other layer on something we have today that we didn't have in the crisis in 2008, 2009 in a robust way. We didn't have the negative doom loop of social media, and we didn't have the nihilism of a generation that feels like, why do anything? Because everything's going to pot. I think what has to happen, we can tolerate higher inflation. If it doesn't get to 2%, which was a made up number and target anyway by a Federal Reserve Bank somewhere else, not even in the US, but we copied them. But if we ended up at 2.5% inflation and wages were rising by 3.5% every year, then we would get out of this. It would be okay. And if we ended up with a tax structure that was a much fairer approach to how things are taxed that you have. I'll give you my pet peeve one. I have two pet peeves, actually. As somebody who has a home with a very cheap mortgage, I don't think mortgage interest should be deductible. I think it is absolutely asinine that we treat owners differently than renters. I think that is patently unfair and it's ridiculous. And I think that the idea that we have an estate tax where you inherit some asset and then no one's paid any tax on that asset and it steps up in cost basis. You can inherit a stock or a company that someone has owned and they paid $10,000 for it. You inherit it at it's worth $100,000 and no one ever has to pay tax on it. I think that's insane. So I don't think we have a very fair tax code. It favors people who already have money. And so I know I'm going to get hate mail on this because a lot of people in high tax brackets and live in high cost of living and high tax states are going to write to me and say, you know what? I pay this much in taxes. Too bad. I'm sorry. That's like really too bad. But we need to have a society and a country where everybody pays taxes and supports everyone else. Wealth inequality and income inequality is not good for an economy. It's actually really bad. And so if we get to a fairer system, I think that is how we get out of this. And having enough jobs with wage growth that is ahead of the inflation rate, and this period will be behind us. And then can you just get rid of social media too, Jeremy?
Well, right. I mean, that we've done shows on it, and I completely agree with you. And I had a 4-day rafting trip in Utah this summer where there were no phones allowed at all, and it was so amazing. I mean, not no phones allowed. There was no reception at all, so you couldn't use them. And the kids were on this trip, and they didn't use them. They played with each other. Can you imagine? But wait, Jill, let me just press you on one thing, because you just said a minute ago that income inequality is really bad for an economy. Can you just explain that? Why is income inequality bad for an economy?
Well, if you only have a smidgen of people able to afford different things in the economy, there will not be enough other people who can spend freely. At some point, the people who are not making enough money, who don't make enough income, will stop spending. Consumers are about 2/3 of the economy. There aren't enough rich people. Like, how many islands are you going to buy? Like, there's not enough spending that they can do that's going to propel the economy. And so when you think about it, like right now, just think of it like on a corporate level. There's these few companies that are spending boatloads of money on AI, right? No one else is spending money like that. if this AI thing doesn't quite work out as some of these companies are expect, we're going to have a lot of problems in the market, and everyone's going to get dragged down with it. When we have our next recession and rich people stop spending money and everyone else can't afford anything either, it is going to be harder to come out of that. You want as many people as possible participating in the economy, making money, spending money, and actually feeling good when things are good. Because guess what? When things are bad, everyone's going to feel like crap.
Jill, everyone who gets to come on this podcast, who does come on this podcast, gets to make a prediction. And I ask you, what is yours? It can be about anything.
By the way, Harrison gave me a hat tip on that. So I knew that.
Our
And
producer
I
Harrison,
didn't think
yes.
twice about it. I was like,
Okay.
what am I going to say? Am I going to say Nixon 5? I don't think so. But by the way, Nixon 5. You know what? I'm terrible at predicting. What I can promise is there will be a time when the stock market will go down 20% or 30%. And what I know that everyone wants to know when, but my prediction is everybody who says it's going to happen one day or another day is wrong. And my prediction is that it's going to happen when you least expect it. You know that it's going to happen. Take a deep breath. Don't be reactive. Make sure you got your emergency reserve fund. Try to pay down that credit card debt. And please try to keep putting money into your retirement accounts.
That is CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger, host of Jill on Money and her new podcast, Money Moves. Jill, thank you so much. Let it not be another 2+ years before we do this again.
No, we're going to do it every quarter now.
Good. Perfect. Yes. Jill, thank you so much. And thanks for listening to The Follow-Up. It was produced by Harrison Patino. Our next episode is coming this week. We've got Fareed Zakaria joining us to talk about Iran and much more. Follow us so you don't miss it. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I will talk to you soon.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.